name's Cyrus Beschloss, Williams class of 2019, and from Washington, D.C., by way of Williamstown, Mass. And I'm
Mhm.
back in Washington, D.C., living with my parents, living in the basement. So gonna cut off this right here.
This is prime post-grad life we're seeing here. But
Grad life
yeah.
pandemic.
Cyrus, why don't you introduce us to, so I know, actually, I'm not sure. Is it still College Reaction and then Generation Labs over it? Is it completely revamped? Why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah, thank you. So we started off called College Reaction. In the last year, we changed our name fully to Generation Lab.
Some
Idea there,
novelty.
right. So the idea there is focus stays the same. We want to understand young people. We want to communicate that to folks in media, folks in business, folks in government, folks just in the American public. Difference is we don't want to just study college students. We want to study anybody under the age of 34 roughly. And then even that number might change. But regardless of folks that take the college route or don't, we want to know about them. So that was sort of the name change. And College Reaction will always be somewhere, near, dear, close to our hearts, but not in the heart itself.
For sure. And maybe if we can actually zoom back to College Reaction, when you were first getting this thing off the ground, what was that process like? Where did you kind of get the inception of your idea? And maybe a touch on the team. I don't know what that looked like early on.
Yeah. So College Reaction. So you got to go back to freshman year. So it was a dark night in the offices of the Williams Record.
Oh my God.
All right, that's where we're going to set the scene. So I actually interviewed to be on the Williams Record, and long story short, got rejected immediately. Quite quickly.
It's okay. You found your footing.
And so, but my goal was to do something really similar to what I ended up doing with College Reaction. So I wanted to study how this was like right before the 2016 election. Bernie was on the rise. A lot of debate between sort of the Bernie and the Hillary strains of young people, right? And so I wanted to just get a sense of what different folks from different corners of Williams thought of the different candidates at 2016. That's one of the things that I wanted to do with the record. How I would have done that and how they would have let me do that, I have no clue. But that was my agenda.
A will away.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure you've had some good. We should talk about our experiences with the record. Mine has been nothing but good, except for but so got rejected. Still wanted to do that though. Like, still wanted to study how people were thinking about their race specifically. Ended up working with the Berkshire Eagle to basically publish folks' opinions, but not just from Williams, because wasn't doing this for the record. Was doing this just with folks. There was a writer named Betsy. There was a writer named Hunter. There was a writer named Jeremy. I remember on our first op-ed to the Berkshire Eagle, and basically they'd all write on the same topic. So a good example would have been like one of the Democratic primary debates, Hillary and Bernie. What did you take away from it? And from the head of the college Republicans at UVA, the head of the college Democrats at Princeton, the head of the debate team at Ole Miss. Different perspectives, same issue, trying to get students' opinions on important issues off of campus.
Yeah.
So those were kind of the early days. Got bounced from the record. Pitched some folks at the Berkshire Eagle. They were unbelievable. And that was basically the sort of prototype for collegereaction.com. So like we took that from the Berkshire Eagle, started doing the same thing on the website, and kept going. This was also right around the time of winter study. So also ended up working on it for winter study.
Okay.
Take advantage of winter study.
That's right. Some downtime. So I think maybe unpacking that, who is we? And I think what we're always interested in hearing was like, did you have a pivotal moment when you went, oh, this would be so cool on a website? Or was it always, you thinking, I always want to share this you were interested in it, but I think the sharing component is what makes College Reaction Generation Labs interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So we, at that time, so for the winter study, um, we had my buddies Atsine, David, Sam. We all worked on that for the month of February on then College Reaction.
Mhm.
Super fun. Did tons of things that we should not have been doing in like weren't even a startup at that point. Still like taking, trying to social media account, just out of control, bad priorities. But did some cool stuff. We ended up making some partnerships with some college newspapers really early on to have some of their columnists basically syndicate work to College Reaction, right, and have different content from different places on the critical issues du jour. They ended up not working on it after winter study. That's okay. They've gone on to do big and brilliant things otherwise.
Yeah.
And I'm still working on it. Like,
are you feeling old?
I feel old often. This makes me feel ancient. So those were the early days. But the second part of your question was
Just kind of the pivotal moment, I guess.
the
If you had
pivotal.
one.
Yeah,
where you wanted to transform this into a website, or I don't know, like whatever scale that looked like.
we had, fast forward a little bit to the summer.
Sure.
We had I was in this little startup incubator in DC.
Okay.
It's called 1776.
Mhm.
Very fitting. And sitting around, the communal work table with the, next to the cold brew.
Yeah. Very classic.
Right. And we ended up getting a piece. This was right after Charlottesville. This is right after the violence at Charlottesville and then President Trump's speech. And we basically got the head of the UVA College Republicans, UVA in Charlottesville, to write an op-ed, basically giving her full feelings on what had just happened and sort of the state of the Republican Party at that point. That, I wouldn't say it like sort of crossed over into national mainstream news, but it did get picked up by a few places. HuffPost, I remember, was one of the ones really, really, really early on.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, wow, people care about what students are saying about non-student stuff, right? It doesn't really have to be Greek life, extreme cases of free speech or whatever. Actually, the issues that define our time.
Yeah.
Care about what young people have to say. So at that point, I sort of realized, okay, this is serious.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and that you did kind of have that activation period, and maybe taking it now to Generation Lab. You grew College Reaction. At what point did you think, it is time to look at other scope outside of the college student majority that you were usually looking at, and what made you feel ready for that kind of shift?
Yeah. I want to do this from the start. From the very start, we wanted to not just focus on students, but just anybody, under 30, 34. So reason we started with students is that, well, first of all, I should say, we eventually transitioned from op-eds, right, to polling, and that is a conversation in and of itself.
Yeah.
But the long story condensed is that I ended up connecting. I figured that if we wanted to actually capture, youth views on these big time issues, needed to do something a little bit more representative. The op-eds were awesome. I loved reading them. We had like 90 writers on staff at a certain point.
Yeah.
Tons of fun. But wasn't statistically sound, obviously. So ended up connecting with a gentleman by the name of Mateen Miramizani, who is now the COO of Generation Lab and College Reaction. And he is, just think, Stanford research wonderkind, like the smartest and nicest person that I know, younger than even I am. And basically, he took us to the next level. He came to DC that summer, and we worked on this. Basically, got the advice of either polling companies, that do this really, really well, or academics who
Mhm.
study statistics and polling. Anyway, so we basically got smart people to tell us how to do a very, very basic poll, right? And therein was the transition over. And right, and so the reason we started with college students was that it's way easier to do it in a systematic, to recruit college students in a systematic and methodologically sound way.
Mm.
Young people, it's a lot harder. There's a lot less demographic data out there, just
Yeah.
right, younger people, and also there's not as much of a systematic way to reach out to them as opposed to students who got the edu emails, for example.
Right.
One stone, it's verification, and it allows us to give everybody on campus an equal chance of being
Yeah.
whole, which is super, super, super important. So we will never, I'm sure you've gotten a fair bit of, spammy emails from places that say that they want your opinion. Hopefully we have never been one of them.
No. Maybe wish it was though. I feel
Yeah.
like I
Well,
think keep on going.
yeah, well, given what's on the other end of our polls, usually it's good for the student to do our polls.
Yeah, I have a question about that. So, um, you say that we recognized certain changes were necessary. We recognize a certain population pool fit your need or existing resource band. I'm just wondering, like in that identification process or this entire process so far, what did mentorship look like for you? Like, were you on the receiving end? Were you on the giving end? Um, and what does it look like? Maybe if we could even compare and contrast, what it looked like early on when college reaction wasn't as formed, and now when I would argue it's a much more, solid entity.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. I was primarily on the receiving end and still am. So I'll start now and go back really, really quickly. Right now, I do not stop getting advice from people. Everybody,
Yeah,
like literally my business, like my Generation Lab
is
is
to hear.
is getting feedback and like
Mhm.
advice from people on everything, right? Like on how companies can do business better, on how government can do policy better in a targeted way. So it's literally getting advice. It's the best thing that I can do. Um, and then obviously there are tons of mentors out there. Going back to when things were getting started out, though, Steve Vogel, who offered a winter study at Williams, who
Mhm.
sponsored our winter study, advised us. Unbelievable mentor, unbelievable. Steve Gerard, philosophy department, also sort of big on college student opinions at that point.
Mhm.
Really, really, really amazing people to help brainstorm and help really launch things out. I, especially with Williams, I think the sooner that you realize that your professors and staff in general want you to succeed for about a million different reasons,
Mhm.
and you start to interact with them um, as friends in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
as people that you generally want to get advice from and talk
Yeah.
through experience with, the better. You
Yep.
will. I don't need to tell you this, but people like, yeah, there's an infinite well of friendship and of wisdom from teachers and from obviously alumni at Williams. So it was present back then with Steve Vogel and like the Bronfman. Do we still call it Bronfman?
I think it's just a science squad now. Dude, we're dating ourselves literally. We're like, oh, what's that called on campus again?
I'm gonna rope you into it, but I'm a fossil. Literally 2019, and I'm a fossil. Yeah, so whatever in Science Squad, and yeah, with Steve Fogel, and then today
Mhm.
I probably emailed 4 Williams related people in the
Yeah.
course of just work this week,
Mhm.
and one of our full time employees is a is a Williams student.
Go East.
Always,
Yeah. I
always,
think, how did you go about sourcing these mentors? um, did you kind of work within your own network? Did you, I don't know. I think like that part is always hard for students to find is, how you find that resource pool to tap into and to really, you know, be able to be on a level of relationship with this person to ask for advice and to trust that advice.
yeah. Um, Honestly, kind of this. Like, there was a lot of, oh, oh, you went to Williams? Yeah, yeah. In all seriousness, a lot of that, like, really amazing alum who I'm sure a lot of people know about, Mariam Nafisi, uh,
Yeah.
founder and CEO of Minted, Williams, Williams alum on the board of trustees. I literally ran into her one time, and she she just saw the it might have been this shirt actually.
Yeah.
Didn't hold it against me that I was on the baseball team, and she was just like, "Oh, Williams." I was like, "Yeah, yeah, you." She was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Wait, your voice sounds familiar." And I realized that I'd heard her on How I Built This. I was like, "Oh, okay." Now, and she's been amazing, super, super, super supportive. But I don't have to, again, do not have to tell you about that. And the um, the other thing I was gonna say is like, I reach out a lot, but
Mhm,
like, I don't reach out just for the sake of reaching out.
mhm.
I know a lot of folks say, "Oh, reach out to alumni, like get it." I just said that. Me 10 minutes ago just said that. But like there are so many folks, there's so many folks in the alumni pool who are insanely relevant to what it is you're doing or what it is you want to do.
Mhm.
Reach out to people who actually can help you, to the people that can actually have a good conversation with you, who you actually enjoy talking to.
Yeah.
Never reach out for the sake of
Just
having
reaching out.
right. So anyways, that's all to say. I've reached out to tons of folks who could either like, hey, potentially even do some sort of work together if I'm
Mhm.
like somehow even like a tiny, tiny, tiny bit helpful to what they do, or um, or getting advice in a way that's actually gonna help me. But as long as you go for something that's really gonna move the needle, I think that that's the best way. And in terms of how to do that, LinkedIn, LinkedIn,
LinkedIn stalking.
LinkedIn search. I'm not like a big LinkedIn user, but I use it like
I think everyone uses it for the search portal. Yeah.
oh my god, that advanced search is just crazy. So use the search.
Yeah.
Not being sponsored by LinkedIn.
Yes, this founder is telling us that. So, we gotta listen.
Right.
No, no. So tell us more about maybe, growth concerns, right? I mean, I know a competitor kind of is Pulse still around.
College, yes,
Yes,
I need
yeah.
to make
So
sure they're-
yeah. I mean
yes,
that was birthed out of what was that birthed out? Bridgewater in Connecticut. So the guy interned at the hedge fund, and then he's like, because Bridgewater is about radical transparency, so you take surveys all the time. Um, and he just said that that's what really birthed the idea of taking surveys all the time and getting a pulse check on people.
Mhm.
So now that you've established call Generation Lab, sorry, I always forget. um what is the concern different regarding growth versus what growth looked like at College Reaction? I'm assuming like when you're at College Reaction it was almost about like, can we even do this thing long term? But what does growth look like today for you?
It's run for your life every single day.
Putting
Uh,
out fires.
exactly. Wish I were kidding. No. Yeah, and they're great group. We've talked many times before, and I still keep in touch with folks that are there right now or who've moved on since then. But yeah, great group, and good. Iron sharpens iron, all that. Um, but in terms of growth, I mean, our biggest thing is that we're sure that if we're a resource, like if we're actually helping people,
Hmm.
then the growth is going to come. Like there is such a massive market in terms of public opinion, tens of billions of dollars for some companies by themselves
Yeah.
uh, in the public opinion space. Focusing on youth, even if that's whatever, let's just say 10% of that market, which is probably more in terms of um, how saturated spending is towards young people marketing. Let's say it's just that's a massive, 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 massive market, huge addressable market. So we're of the belief that if we're a publicly facing resource, folks know about us.
Mm-hmm.
We can do everything that we wanted to do, which is, again, this is a little hazier than I want to be as somebody who's theoretically making decisions. But our goal is just to be the go-to source when it comes to youth. When you think sports, right, you might think like ESPN if you were born in like 1980, or me, or you want to know what the weather is, right? You think like Weather Channel or weather app, I guess. Phone. Like, these make sense in my head before I say them out loud, but we want it to be the same way for businesses and for, frankly, for folks who are just curious at home.
Mm-hmm.
I think about youth. First thing I think of is Generation Lab,
Yeah.
and that really does inform everything we do on the business side, on the media side, and on the sort of public interest side, working with advocacy, nonpartisan advocacy groups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe if we could hear more about the growth level on the venture side. So in terms of financing, I think that's always a big concern for anyone trying to, be an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
who's going to back it with resources. What was that process like for you? Has your pitch changed since?
Definitely. So we ended up getting some interest from some VCs, especially when I was out in California, and it was cool. Like, it's cool. There are startups out there though that are so much better suited than we are to be like VC companies, and that's what we kind of determined after doing a few talks with some great folks. Like, cannot recommend them any higher.
Mm-hmm.
We're not looking for any sort of explosive growth in the first 2 years. $10 billion or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a lot of ways we're a small business as opposed to a startup.
Yeah.
Right. Incremental growth, move from single companies to enterprise clients. We're not going to create some sort of ecosystem that's going to go viral. Maybe one of our polls will go viral. Maybe some of our research is going to go viral. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
we get 10x clients month over month at some point. Whatever, be awesome. But we're not looking to scale to the moon. We want to work with young people. We don't want to build some sort of we want to build some sort of revolutionary app that's going to change some industry completely different, right? We want to study this market. We want to do it really, 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 really well. And that's way more conducive to going the route that we did go in terms of financing, which was, we ended up actually getting, we've only raised a seed round for full reference, and 25% of the money that we raised was from was non-dilutive, was from the Ford Foundation, a grant, right?
Yeah.
So that was the first investment that we actually got, and then from there we ended up getting connected with folks who were interested in the space, right? Either private investors or folks that are working in either like private equity, VC, but we didn't end up going the straight VC route, and I think that tracks a lot better with the type of growth that we're looking to have.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody has to go the VC route. I'm biased, but it's a great route for tons and tons and tons of companies, not us.
Got it. That's interesting. And, what is that, when you make decisions now regarding growth, what does that process look like? You have a COO. How big is your team? Is it a whole collective decision always? If not, what usually differentiates that? Like, what is your position really doing?
Yeah, that's so good. So we're 11 people right now, which feels like a corporation relative to before. really the hardest decisions that we have to make are cases where um, there's a partner that we're looking to work with, to do polling with, to do research with,
Yeah.
and maybe they can't pay full freight, and
Mm.
right, and there are lots of decisions where we have to think, okay, is it in just like public interest for this information to be out there,
Yeah.
right? If it's information about getting the vaccine out to young people, how to best do that, right? Like information on how to refinance your student loans, and maybe the partner doesn't have. Those have been the toughest decisions, and those are ones that we have to make by committee and really think like, does the information that we're getting um, justify
The
eating
cost. Yeah.
the cost exactly? And so far, I'm proud to say, almost always that decision has been yes. But that's because of what we started out by being, right? Like, which is that we want to be the go-to source for young people, right?
Hmm.
Like understanding young people. And if our goal was to build like explosive technology that's gonna, the answer would always be no.
Yeah.
But it's opened a lot of doors to go in a slightly different direction.
Got it. Got it. And maybe to wrap things up, what's a piece of advice you would give someone today who is in your shoes, maybe even like back at the Berkshire Eagle or when you're just getting this website going? What's something you would say to them regarding, I don't know if we should say success as an indicator, but like maybe part of the perseverance to keep on going?
Yeah. My advice would be
It's coming to you.
don't listen to me. Get somebody else better to give you advice. That would be my piece of advice. No,
No, sorry, it's a cop. That's a cop out. Okay,
like,
let me rephrase.
hypothetically, if I were to give somebody advice, I would say find one thing that's very, 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 very concrete that you're doing. Like,
Mhm.
right, don't build an ecosystem where that will eventually be profitable and eventually serve things because you don't get a critical mass, this and that. Like, find something that you're going to do that's going to serve somebody today, tomorrow, and do that better than anybody else next to you, 5 feet from you, a mile from you, and then keep going. Build that out, do that more,
Mhm.
and then once you've gone high enough, then expand outwards, and then you can start doing different things, approaching different frontiers. But I always sort of think about, I have this analogy, and I'll wrap it there. But I always have this analogy of restaurants. You don't want to be that restaurant that invests the ranch in like building this huge giant warehouse, right? Like getting ready
Mhm.
for these people to come in, fancy uniforms, all this whatever, and then like nobody really comes in.
Yeah.
But you've invested your life and everything. Be the like little dingy shack that just makes unbelievable tacos. Like, oh God, have you been to that place? They've just got unreal tacos, better than anywhere else in town,
Yeah.
right? And it's just it's a little shack, but it's always bursting with people. It's spilling out with people, and then guess what? You have to get a bigger place, and then you fill that one up, and then you get a bigger place.
Yeah.
That's a piece of advice. Is just make the best tacos. Like,
Maybe, yeah, not getting ahead of yourself.
yeah, which I have to remind myself very often, and I
Yeah.
make terrible tacos personally. So
It's okay. It's a work in progress.
yeah.